well. So glad you could join us again. It's been a while. Let me dust off the old seat and go ahead and sit down. Let's heat things up as we start our first October edition of the Hot Seat. How did those guys do it back in the day? Torchetti here, yes. Starting off another season of the Hot Seat, starting in November because that's what the kids are doing. And the man in the hot seat today, if you would, good sir, please introduce yourself to the public.
Hi, my name is Grant Lankard. I am the editor and curator and one of the writers on the new Halloween comic book, Memoirs of the Morbid, which will be on Kickstarter October 4th, Monday.
Very cool. Now, what actually inspired Memoirs of the Morbid? Love the title, by the way. It's got that pop. But like, what came to be?
So it's basically inspired by old EC comics from the 40s and 50s. For instance, Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, those kind of comic books.
Cool. Now, are you going more the direct approach with horror, or is it, oh, we're spooky, lol?
So there's 5 stories, and some of them I think are more maybe like have like a sense of irony to them, whereas some of them, like you said, I think are more direct, more kind of visceral horror, I would say.
Oh, okay. Are we going the slow burn approach with this to appeal to the, I guess, faux non-existent comics code like they did back in the day where, you know, you're probably only allowed 1 decapitation, so let's just make that page look grim as hell? Or are you a little more liberal with the approach here?
Yeah, so the comic book is for mature readers. We put that on the cover. Overall, I don't think there's really too much in it that you wouldn't want your kids to see. There's a little bit of blood here and there, a little bit of, shall we say, stronger language. But yeah, for the most part, I think, I guess I got a little bit liberal with the for mature readers only because I don't think there's anything too bad in this comic book.
So if Dad was sitting down with Junior, this would be okay because Dad's controlling the pages and deciding how to say the words if need be.
Yeah, I think that there's maybe 2, maybe 3 examples of strong language, and there's a few scenes of blood. I don't think there's any like decapitations like you said.
I was just giving an example. That seemed to be the go-to, allegedly, with Tales from the Crypt back in the days. Oh, they're decapitating women in every issue. When,
right.
As we all know, that infamous cover they're all talking about was for a crime suspense comic and not one of their horror titles.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's almost as if they didn't actually read the material.
Right.
But, so, in homage to those styles, you were saying that some of these have an irony to them, so it's like a morality play? Or is it more of a... Were you going for a Shyamalan vibe with these endings?
I don't know if I would say necessarily irony. The one story, Kiss as Cold as Death, is about 1940s and 1950s Hollywood. and there's definitely kind of a retro vibe with it. Some of the dialogue is kind of 1940s-ish. So, yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily say, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's got like a sense of irony, but I think it's maybe kind of homaging or like lampooning comic books from that era.
Oh, okay. So like they're narrating their actions as they're, oh no, I'm locked in here with this ghoul. Oh, and it appears to be getting colder. What's happening? Like they're
Right.
actually saying it. Okay. I actually like that. I'm very guilty of that. I like that. It lets you know you're in a comic book as opposed to a, you know, novelization or the like.
Right. Yeah, it's a neat little story. I think especially if you like retro comics, I think you'll like that one.
Okay. Very cool, very cool. So, what actually got you into comics? Like
Oh God. So that goes back to like when I was like maybe 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking like 1992, which was kind of like the height of comic books.
When the exodus happened, as some historians call it, when Image began to start up.
Right. So this would have been right around when guys like Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, those guys were all at Marvel, and it was a level of celebrity that no comic book creator had ever achieved before that. So for me to see, you know, at least in my mind, a bunch of guys who just sat around and drew all day becoming celebrities was just unbelievable to me. You know, they didn't look that much different than I did. You know, they didn't wear a suit and tie. They just wore t-shirt and shorts to work. It seemed like a pretty appealing life to me. And so I started buying comic books at like, you know, the pharmacy or the grocery store, because back in those days, they actually did sell comic books at grocery stores. I don't know if you're old enough to remember any of this stuff.
Oh,
but...
I'm 37. I'm not old, but yeah, I remember that. Mom taking her sweet time in the checkout lane. Suddenly, there's 5 other items in the basket, but as I'm waiting, I turn around and Venom's right there in my face next to Superman and the mask. I especially love it when they didn't even realize what content they had, so you have like this nice possible family-friendly Spider-Man story, and then there's a Dark Horse comic next to it, and the Predator's on the cover ripping out a cybernetic space marine's spine. And they didn't know any better.
Right. So that's kind of how I got into comic books. And then I kind of progressed on to going to the comic book store. When I discovered that existed.
Yeah.
And then that was the world, of course.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. First time you ever walked into one of those, you're like, wait, there's no judgment. The walls are covered in colors. They have more than 3 books. There's more than 3 books out there. Oh, my God.
Right. And, yeah, I remember we drove by a comic book shop for quite a while, and I remember seeing, you know, the name of the comic book store was Patty's Paperback, and it's no longer there. It was kind of the epitome of a store that just kind of got in on the boom market and then went away as soon as the boom was over.
Yeah.
But I remember we drove by it, and I remember like asking my mom, like, what is that store anyways? And her saying like, oh, that's a comic book store. And that kind of blew my mind, the idea of an entire store of just comic books.
Yeah. It's like a few years prior, it would have been Toys R Us. Nowadays, it's GameStop. But yeah,
well, the name of the store was Patty's Paperbacks and Comics. So obviously, comic books weren't their first priority. Their first priority was a bunch of used paperbacks that they had, and then they started selling one or two comic books, and before you knew it, half the store was comic books.
Yeah, I don't know if you have them where you are, but we've got half price books over here, and
yeah,
but yeah, most of them now have a good size comic collection. Some
right.
of them have weirder titles though, like you might see the mainstream stuff from like the past few years because the comic shops are trying to get rid of them, at least enough, and then hold on to one or two for collectors. I remember thumbing through one. It was like, Silver Surfer, Sonic the Hedgehog, and then this weird indie title called Pervert Club.
Pervert Club?
I kid you not. It's a book that exists. But it wasn't like a hentai. It was just like a dark high school set. Like, okay, think Heathers. If you know, do you know anything about that movie?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, yeah. Think Heathers, only instead of their intention, they want to liberate but playfully corrupt the school masses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So their quote unquote bomb is collections of Mapplethorpe pictures and things like that.
Well, that sounds fun.
It was actually kind of witty. The artwork in question also like throws you for a loop because it's that very American attempt at anime, but it's really simplistic.
Right.
So they all have close to the same body, like the bigger head with the bigger eyes, and they've got the expressions down. But yeah, it was a very interesting book. I swear it exists. There's no way I would make this up.
I was going to say, I don't know what.
Yeah,
motivation.
I would have nothing to gain from that. But
So that corrupted your young mind. It sounds like.
I mean, the cover was definitely striking because it was like, wait, are they ashamed? Are they about to get beat up? What's going on? Because you saw this person, you couldn't even tell if it was a guy or a girl or whatever they chose to identify with, and they're kind of looking at you, the reader. But the way they're knelt over, it's as if like they just got popped in the jaw or something. So that's what really had me kind of concerned, was like, wait, are they getting beat up for this?
Yeah.
But it turns out it was just the coming out issue for that particular person, because the moment Mom turned her back, I flipped through at least 6 pages of that going, what is this? But
I can't decide if that's progressive or not.
I mean, it didn't look like they were browbeating the person. It was just, hey, I happen to wear lingerie under my skate clothes. I was like, oh, okay. But then I was awakened by the Wildstorm universe and shown that, oh wow, they can actually be like the old 80s action films, just everyone has superpowers.
You're starting to break up a little bit.
Oh, I was just saying, like, after that, like, I was introduced to Wildstorm comics and Vertigo and the like, and seeing
oh, yeah. I loved those two when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Gen 13 became my jam for sure.
Gen 13. So that was Gen 13 was an interesting one because I feel like a lot of those Image comic books kind of were bought and sold on how should I put it, like the TNA.
Oh,
factor.
they were aesthetically pleasing. That's for sure.
Right. But I think the difference between Gen 13 and a lot of those was that Gen 13 had a little bit of a sense of irony with it.
Oh yeah, I know. Like they knew they were doing a team book with a bunch of teenagers, so they went that route. It's just you didn't expect the teenagers to act like teenagers.
Right.
Like, oh no, there's relationship turmoil. Oh no, there's self-loathing. Oh, do I live up to the family legacy or do I try to strike out on my own? Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you. You know,
Right.
it became very interesting, and also, you know, when they had their super strong female lead, like literal super strong female lead. For those who've never read the book, like she was I guess she was She-Hulk for lack of a better term, just without the color change.
Talking about...
Yeah, Fairchild, but yeah, some artists actually drew her to be moderately developed, especially when she would get physical. She'd seem to get a little bulkier.
Right.
Yeah, and back in the day, that was considered really questionable. Like, what? Why are you making the skinny redhead so buff when she lifts this building? Gee, I don't know, because she's using her muscles, and that's what muscles do when you lift.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, nowadays, if that book came out today, which DC Comics, why did you drop the ball on that? But if that book came out today, I would like to believe they'd applaud. For, oh yeah, she actually looks like she's athletic and this and the other. And then you'd have that 1% that's like, yeah, she's muscly. Like, oh god.
You're probably right.
Yeah. I don't want to be. At least not in that one area. I really don't want to be, but the rest of it I would love to think, oh yeah, there you go. And then they'd have a new team book on their hands, and then they'd be, you know, competing again with their competition and, you know, probably getting something new out there instead of another Hawk and Doug pairing.
Yeah, I don't know why DC has all of those characters, and they're kind of just sitting on them. I don't know if there's a reason.
I think it's because they have so many characters that they don't remember who they actually have. I mean, hell, technically the original Blue Beetle is public domain.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Dan Garrett, yeah, he's public domain. His concept is public domain. The only reason why people don't call him Blue Beetle if they ever do put him in a book is because, you know, the one smart thing DC did, ironically enough, after killing Ted Kord, was making sure everyone knew the name Blue Beetle. Jaime Reyes is a great character. Most people have treated him very well. And this extended lore of the Blue Beetle is amazing. But, you know, it was at the hands of the death of Ted Kord and pretty much the erasing of Dan Garrett from public knowledge. Like you've got to dive deep into that lake to get all that juiciness.
Hey.
And just think, in about 10 more years, Superman will be public domain no matter what. But
Warner Brothers is not going to let that happen.
Well, the way it works is the concept, like they can't take you to court if an alien with these abilities is in your book. But if you call him Kal-El directly, or if you say he's Superman, then it's that whole, hey, we'll let you do the rest of that, but you can't call him that.
Right. It's crazy to think, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you can do a modern day interpretation of Robin Hood, and I could do a modern interpretation of Robin Hood, and that would be absolutely fine as long as we don't do the exact same story.
Right.
Like yours could be blonde and a family man living in the suburbs doing what he does, and mine is a college student. Right. See, totally different. Bow and arrows are commonplace.
It's interesting because technically speaking, Marvel doesn't own the copyright to Thor or any of those Thor characters. Because technically speaking, Thor is a Norse myth, and you can't trademark mythology.
Oh, very true. But what they do is they trademarked the aesthetic. That's the reason why they had Jack Kirby kind of go into overdrive when he had these designs. That's why even in the movies you notice that they're very similar to that comic interpretation. That's why Thor comes off as blonde. That's why Mjolnir is within a certain height-weight ratio compared to Thor himself. Because there was another Thor comic that existed that is in public domain, and I think they kept him redhead for that, but
yeah. I mean, other companies have done Thor comic books, and I mean, you really just have to change the look a little bit, like you mentioned. Maybe giving him red hair, that sort of thing. And you can't copyright mythology. I mean, as I was, like the one comic book that I did was called Beowulf. And I remember when I first started doing that comic book, a lot of people warned me, like, you're not going to be able to trademark this. Like, anybody who wants to can go out and make a Beowulf comic book. And I said, if I ever get to the point where people are making copycat comic books of mine, I'm going to be doing pretty good. I don't think I'm going to worry about that.
Yeah, it's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time Stan Lee saw another teenage superhero sticking to a wall with bug-like abilities, he was like, ha ha, they know we're out here. Like,
exactly.
He was actually very thrilled. I think Jack Kirby had to buy him a steak that day. Hey Jack, they know we're here. Damn it.
That's not a bad impersonation.
That took years. That took years of practice. You know, every Marvel movie where he ever was, I'm like, I wonder if anyone's ever going to do this. And then the moment I start working on it, I'm seeing cosplayers doing their own stands at cons.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh no, it's always very clever because they do it very cinematically. So he's just sitting in the back eating a cheese sandwich, waves at Deadpool. Deadpool's the only one who sees him.
Right. Oh, that's clever.
It's even funnier when he's around other characters. But people keep forgetting that technically the first Stan Lee cameo wasn't even in a Marvel movie. He was in the diner scene at the end of Superman 2.
Oh.
Yeah, he's that second guy who turns around after Clark chucks the biker or trucker or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, I've been working out. And Stan looks over like, yeah, working out. Yeah, it was a nice, very subtle nod. And you're like, that's Stan.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think it was that 1 year that he was quote unquote a free agent, but still like championing Marvel because he's trying to get them into mainstream.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever hope that your efforts are noticed by these other names, or are you trying to just establish your own brand?
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing you. You're kind of breaking up.
Uh, I said, do you plan on actually working for one of the big names soon, or are you hoping to establish your own brand?
I'm going to be honest with you. Working for Marvel or DC, I don't even know how or what I would do with that. I mean, to me, trying to write a character like Superman that there have literally been thousands of stories about, I would have absolutely no idea where to even begin doing that. I think what would be nice is if maybe I got picked up by like a smaller publisher, like maybe Mad Cave, or one of those type of, maybe IDW, somebody like that. But I'm not saying that I would turn down the chance to write or illustrate Superman or Batman. But God, like, the whole thing seems very, very intimidating to me.
I mean, on one end, yeah, if you got dropped with one of the assignments, it could probably. I mean, I don't want to say it could probably, but in your mind, you've got that 50-50 that it could flop. Or you could end up being one of those guys that writes a brilliant one-shot like What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Like, that was a filler issue. That was a filler this guy did. And it turned into one of the Eisner nominees for that year. It was such a great story, they turned it into an animated movie. It's one of the few Superman stories that I absolutely love.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, and it's a one and done. Like, it gets right to the point of what Superman was about.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great story. And that writer, Joe Kelly, I don't think he ever like really topped that story or even really came close.
I mean, why would you want to? Like, you look at that, you're like, yeah, I pretty much wrote the definitive Superman story of the new millennium. At least the first decade.
For sure.
I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head if any other character has had as heavy an impact with one issue. Like, don't get me wrong, Grant Morrison has done great series. Like, his All-Star Superman collectively was great.
That's like my favorite. That's like my favorite comic book of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it's very well done. And yeah, he has a great moment in there that is Superman when he prevents the girl from jumping. Like, that is just so, like, that still hits me. I mean, I'm not going to like sit down and get misty reading that page, but you read those words and the way Quietly does the artwork for that, like, you can tell he's being as careful as he can around her. And just reassuring her just with his words, like, you're going to be okay. There are people there to help you.
Yeah, I love all of that. I love the All-Star Superman is definitely up there. Maybe my favorite comic book of all time. The comic book series, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely, God, that was definitely one of those that just completely caught me off guard. And then you got the other side with All-Star Batman and Robin, and you're like, really? You're linking this with the Dark Knight. You're linking this Batman with the Dark Knight. I mean, that was a red flag for me that maybe Miller was starting to slip. And then Holy Terror came out, and I was like, oh, Oh wow, did you lose a bet? Like are you trying to satirize? Because this doesn't look like you're satirizing so much. I mean,
Yeah.
thankfully Frank has kind of gone back and gone, yeah, I was very emotional back then. That shouldn't justify my actions. But, and then hammering home that he was there when the towers fell. Like, yeah, I'm sure you were. I don't doubt that in the least. You are a New York resident. We know this. But you singled out a group of people. Now, if he had been constantly telling stories where Osama bin Laden got his head crushed by every superhero in existence, one way or another, okay, fine. I get that. It's like back in the day when Hitler was the threat, and it was actually Hitler, not some vague analogy for Hitler, like the hate monger or anything like that. Hitler.
Right.
Hitler got punched out by Captain America, the original Daredevil. Another public domain character. Blue
Right.
Beetle, the Phantom, the Shadow. Everybody punched Hitler in the face. But
Right.
once again, it was Hitler and the Nazis. It wasn't every German is wrong, every German needs to die. It was those guys. So you had that. But yeah, I know Frank just kind of grouped a bunch of people together. And then we had that for a while. And then he wrote a story where Superman actually does have sex with a mermaid, joins the military, uses guns, and kills people.
Yeah, I mean, some of these creators, I think maybe they need to retire a little bit earlier than they do.
Yeah.
Frank Miller is a perfect example. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm sure there are lots of good older comic book writers and artists, but man,
Yeah.
when
Well,
they go, that's
yeah.
so really good.
Don't get me wrong. I could totally see a story where Clark Kent enlists in the military, but I also believe he probably would start testing out his abilities at this point. That's when he
Right.
realizes that he can run really fast. That's when he realizes, oh, I'm bulletproof, because he, shoves his commanding officer out of the way of a sniper bullet that he hears for the first time. He takes it to the head and falls over, and it's like, man, Kent, you're a lucky SOB. That thing splintered on impact, but it didn't even go in your skull. Yeah, I'm totally lucky. Ow.
Right.
But like, he's using his abilities on the field, and he never uses a gun. He'll go for it. Oh no, it jammed, and then he disarms everybody. Like, what's going on out here? You could totally go completely Silver Age with that, and it would be a Superman story. Yeah, he happens to be in the military at the time. There are ways to make it work, but to him just to quote unquote play along, like that's always been one of his quirks for those who read manga. But he plays along, but he doesn't go completely native.
Right.
If you really look at his opinion of mankind, there's some negative thoughts there. The common working man, they hunch over a little bit. They shuffle their feet. He wears glasses. He doesn't always enunciate. Things like that. That's not a welcoming thought. This superior being, yeah, we're squishy to you, but you don't have to be so passive aggressively, mean about it.
That's interesting. I guess I never thought of it that way.
I've spent many a night down comic book rabbit holes coming across these, I will call them discussions, but they end up being dumpster fires. The internet's a beautiful place, isn't it, my friend? But like, what are some of your opinions, or what are some of your tips for young creators? Let's go down that road before we completely deconstruct a business that we love. Some kid sits down in front of you and says, "I want to get into comics." What would you say?
So, so the big thing, the old model of, you get a sample pack together and then you send it into Marvel, that doesn't exist anymore. So get that out of your head. That's the first thing that I would say. One of my favorite YouTube channels is called Cartoonist Kayfabe. They have a saying where they say, don't wait for somebody to give you permission to make comic books. Just make comic books. I think that's really good advice. Instead of spending years and years studying anatomy and, honing your craft, you're going to learn all that stuff by making comic books. So, and the first one or two might be kind of rough, but by your fifth or sixth one, you're going to be getting better.
And you'll also have your style down.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I talk to a lot of people, a lot of people on Instagram, Twitter, etc. A lot of them want to make a comic book, but it almost feels like they're looking for an excuse not to. And, my advice would be just go out and do it.
Okay. Along the lines of the market, do you believe that the internet is the definitive future, or do you think that print will always be around? Do you think someone's always going to want to hold the book, or does it matter anymore?
There might come a day when print becomes obsolete. I don't think we're there yet. I don't know about you, but I still like to have a physical book in my hand. I don't know. I don't feel like the experience of reading it digitally is as good as reading a physical copy, but that might just be because I'm old. I don't know.
I don't know.
What do you think?
I think we all adapted from Nintendo to PlayStation 5 rather well. Well, in my case, even Atari, but no, I think people will try to keep print around because vinyl has come back significantly. And
right.
And everyone said, "Oh, that's not going to be needed anymore." And on one end, I get it. I understand what they're trying to say. But vinyl had its purpose, and aesthetically, when you see someone put on a record, oh, you're about to sit down and enjoy some tunes. Like there's a ritual, and I think that's what it is. I think we're never going to give up the ritual as much as anything else.
I think that's a lot to do with it. And I think also it's nice to have a physical copy of something. It just isn't the same. To me, even if it's a CD, I remember going to the music store, saving up money, plopping my money down, and getting a CD in exchange. Quite frankly, it's not the same emotional impact as just searching for an artist on Spotify.
Oh, true. Oh, no. Going back even further than that, cassettes. Remember getting so good with a certain cassette, you could straight up roll the tape right to where you need it and then start the song from there because you know it that well. You can just turn the speakers off, play the tape out, watch watch the actual tape, and when it gets to that one spot, then you kick the speakers in, and boom, your song's on, you're jamming out, you're having a great time.
Right. Yeah, I think I remember just the tail end of the cassette thing. But yeah, I remember it was a pain in the butt. You had to if you wanted to listen to a song twice in a row, you had to rewind it, and you had to hope that you didn't rewind it so far that you went to the song before the one that you wanted to hear.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's when you got good enough, because then you do the countdown in your head or whatever. Like everybody had their thing. You know, I was one of those that for a while I could win a staring contest because I would watch and I would not blink until I knew for a fact, yep, here we go, click, and it's on. But enough about the retro. Let's get back to Memoirs of the Morbid.
I'm sorry, you're cutting up again.
I was saying enough about the retro. Let's get back to your book, your baby, your contribution to horror comics.
Yeah, so Memoirs of the Morbid, it's going to be over 60 pages. It's five stories. I would say on average about 10 pages per story. And then there's a narrator called the Ghoul Master, who's obviously kind of an homage to like the Crypt Keeper or one of those like, you know, EC Comics style horror narrators. We have attracted some of the best indie creators out there. The art is awesome. It's been so exciting for me getting the art in my email every day. So it's launching on Monday. Do you want me to go more into detail on like the different stories?
No. I think you tease the audience enough without dropping the one about Hollywood. So if that doesn't whet their appetite, then they don't know what horror is.
Right. Yeah, so like I was saying, it's going to be 5 different stories. They're all self-contained. Some of the people who are working on this, Brian K. Morris, Ian Mondrian, we have Matt Miner. The covers in particular are great. All of the people that I asked to do covers for this comic book are people who I never thought would work with me in a million years. They're people who have done work for like DC, Dark Horse, Image. Basically, I just asked them, hey, would you like to work on this comic book? Assuming that they were going to say no. And to be perfectly honest with you, some of them did say no, but enough of them said yes, that I'm like, wow, this comic was turning out great.
Well, awesome. Well, who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, your work will be translated onto a streaming service. You know, Hulu presents Memoirs of the Morbid.
I mean, that would be nice. I mean, that's not what drives me or anything. You know, I'm not one of those people who's just like, I view comic books as a means to an end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You've told your story. There you go. Now, will these be like separate issues? Or will it be like a collected graphic novel?
It's a collected graphic novel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all going to be one big volume.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's 60 pages, so it's like maybe halfway between a trade paperback and like a floppy.
Okay. So always nice to get those.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that still appeals to people when it comes to comic books. Like when you got it, you got your story, but it's in a nice bite-sized pack right there. It's like between 22 and 32 pages, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but it's not as intimidating as like even just a dime store paperback.
Well, and it's also nice that each story is only around 10 pages long. So you can read each of the stories like in one setting, which, to be honest with you, like in this world where it feels like these stories never end, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go to see a Marvel movie, like at the end of the Marvel movie, they're setting up the next movie. And it's like, you know, WandaVision is setting up Loki, and Loki is setting up whatever's next. You know, it's nice to be able, you know, in 20 minutes, sit, read a story. Okay, that's the end of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Which is wonderfully ironic with how the rest of the world seems to be operating. Like, you got TikTok and you had Vine before that, but all of these, like, their max limit is like 3 minutes. And that's considered stretching it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So, like, everything is just elevator pitches now.
Right.
So, if you can actually get someone to sit down for 20 minutes and enjoy your book, which I hope happens, I hope you have more than enough people who sit down and enjoy this after it gets funded completely, because clearly that's what's going to happen. Because, folks, you want Memoirs of the Morbid to succeed, don't you? I will even put a link in the description for those of you checking this out on YouTube. I will put the link to the Instagram on the page, and y'all can go check it out and then go, oh yeah, this is a great idea. Because I snuck a look at it earlier, and the artwork looks great. That Ghoul Master, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ghoul Master, very iconic. Like, very, very quickly identifiable, cannot be mistaken for another character. The artwork, great. I love the retro vibe. It clearly, I mean, I'm assuming the artwork was for that Hollywood Kisses of Death story.
Right.
I'm like shuffling through my notes right now. Sorry if I'm getting things muddled up, but yeah. So that was Memoirs of the Morbid. What is? Do y'all have like a publishing brand that you're going with for this, or is it just Monarch?
That's the name. Monarch Publishing is the name of my kind of self-published title, and you can actually get a free sample of Monarch of Memoirs of the Morbid if you go to monarchpublishing.net.
So there you go, folks. Go to monarchpublishing.net for a sample of the chilling tales of Memoirs of the Morbid.
Yeah, there's a big button at the top of the screen that says free comic book. You just click on that. It'll ask for your email address, and it'll send you a sample PDF to your email.
Well, very cool. Very cool indeed. So,
thanks.
I would just like to thank our guests again. Let the people know who you are one more time, please.
My name is Grant Lankard. I think if you search on pretty much any social media, I think my name is distinct enough that it's the first one that comes up. I'm Grant Lankard on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, find me there and follow me or friend me.
Well, all right. That was Grant Lankard of Monarch Publishing with the soon-to-be next horror classic, Memoirs of the Morbid.
Yeah, thank you so much.
As always, I'm Ian Torchetti, and the hot seat is now out.